Hello and welcome to the France 24 interview. Our guest is Jordan's Minister of Planning and International Cooperation, Imad Fakhoury. Mr. Minister, thank you very much for being with us.
Avec plaisir, thank you.
The situation in the region is obviously extremely volatile. You have a war in Syria, you have war in Iraq, you have war in Yemen. Clearly the picture is very grim, including for Jordan that is trying to manage in the midst of this chaos.
Well, unfortunately, the regional turbulence and situation is quite drastic. But on the positive side, Jordan has, as it always has, been very successful at being able to maneuver the burdens, the threats, and to sustain its resilience and to preserve Jordan as an oasis of stability in spite of these very difficult situations around us. And to be honest, I mean, we live in a neighborhood where there isn't always the perfect time for a calm situation to do the things you need to do as a nation, as a country. So Jordan has learned very early on over the many decades that our resilience is paramount, that we're not gonna, as His Majesty said in his speech yesterday very clearly, use the regional circumstances in any way to slow down or deflect attention from continuing our comprehensive reform program and development program for the country.
That being said, the security situation is tense, including at the very borders of Jordan and probably also in Jordan. How much of a threat is there to Jordan from Daesh or other groups like that?
I think the world knows. They've seen Jordan being surrounded by difficult situations many times. This is not the first time.
And targeted.
And we've always been quite successful for those who bet on the stability of Jordan. And we have an increasing burden, obviously, militarily, security, protecting the 370 kilometers border with Syria is an increasing burden. But we are very confident in Jordan, in our security forces, the military, and their ability to actually counter any potential threat and so on. Inside Jordan, the situation is quite stable. We're hosting for the 9th time, as you can see, the World Economic Forum. We're sitting at the heart of Jordan, at the Dead Sea region, and we have over 1,000 people from 60 countries who are visiting Jordan, touring Jordan, and participating in this. So internally, the situation continues to be quite stable and business as usual.
Business is not as usual in one way. It's the demographic, if I should call it that way, change. 1.4 million refugees from Syria. This represents a 20% increase of the population.
Correct.
And this is not just something that a small country like yours can digest easily. It's a major problem for the country, for the economy.
Absolutely, and I think the world knows the burdens that some of the countries or neighboring countries to Syria are facing. Jordan today, with the 1.4 million Syrians that are present on our territory, which is a 20% increase in population, is the third country in the world in terms of having to absorb waves of refugees in history.
Isn't this threatening the balance of Jordan?
This threatens our resilience, but we've always been able to balance carefully, sustaining our resilience, working closely with the international community and regional partners to make sure that we get the necessary help to enable us to continue our resilience, to maintain it, because we play a critical role in the region. We're doing this not just because this is our Arab, Islamic and humanitarian duty, but we also are doing this because this is the right thing to do, but we're doing it as a burden on behalf of the region and the international community.
But the money is not there. You have a $2.9 billion plan. I believe you only got 10% from international donors. So the money is not there.
Agreed.
So nice words of support is fine. But if you don't have the money, how can you bear with that?
I think Jordan is lobbying very strongly now, and we're raising our proposals at the international level, that although we're grateful for all the assistance that Jordan has been receiving and similar countries in the region like Lebanon and so on, however, the aid that has been coming in is not catching up and keeping up with the increasing needs of the refugee population. So just to give you a few examples, we have 92% of the 1.4 million Syrians in Jordan are outside refugee camps. They live all across our towns and villages, which means they get all the services, health, education, etc., from our national system, from our public schools, public hospitals, public clinics. Last year we had over...
This cannot last.
I agree with you. I think we're reaching a point where it's going to be very difficult for us to sustain our ability to provide services to a population, to a Syrian population where 85% of them are below the Jordanian poverty line. 6% of them are in abject poverty. We have 141,000 Syrian students in our public schools. We're running them at double shifts. Last year alone, we had 700,000 Syrians visit our health clinics, hospitals, and so on. Increase on water demand has gone up by 20 to 40%, and energy by 30%, and the residential usage.
So the word out on the street and in many circles that deal with refugees is that, without saying it, Jordan is trying to maybe encourage them to return to Syria or move elsewhere because Jordan cannot stand this burden anymore. Is this Jordan's unofficial policy?
No, Jordan's policy is exactly what we declare all the time. We have still maintained our open borders. We are adding just additional measures to vet and make sure that we don't have any infiltrations take place given all the threats around us, which especially with ISIS, Daesh, and all of these Khawarij and other extremist groups. So we are dealing with a very difficult situation, but we have still not abandoned our duty, but we're lobbying very strongly with the international community to say that we need more assistance, and this assistance has to translate in newer ways. It's not the traditional way of just saying, I'm going to provide humanitarian assistance.
If not, are you going to ask the refugees to go back?
I'm not going to comment on that, but I think if the international community abandons supporting Jordan, then we should not be blamed for not sustaining our resilience and ability to sustain providing services to the refugees.
Are you very worried by the recent developments, both in Iraq with the fall of Ramadi, in Syria, the fall of Palmyra at the hand of ISIS? I mean, I know the king had recently spoken about his hope that the road from Baghdad to Amman would be reopened. Clearly, it's mission impossible right now.
I think we all understand very clearly that this battle against extremists, and especially against these Khawarij on the Islamic faith, is not a short-term battle. The military component of it is going to take months, a year to two. The security dimension is going to have to be sustained to counter them. But the long-term countering of their ideology, the extremist ideology, is something that's going to take a very long period and requires a very holistic approach to deal with it. We're aware that these are small setbacks, but they're part of winning something in the short term on a certain location and losing another territory. It's going to be back and forth until this is moved to the point that it is contained and diminished militarily to a higher level.
And is Jordan willing to be more proactive? Maybe in Syria there was talk about maybe arming some tribes or something, or Jordan feels it cannot really do much more because of some of the burdens we've
Well, I think Jordan is taking a leadership position with the coalition against Daesh. I think the whole world knows that. We've announced this, that this is not just a situation where we're joining a coalition, that this is a battle for us within the Arab world, within the Islamic world, that we need to lead, we need to work on, and we cannot actually allow these people in any way to win this or to have the upper hand in this situation. So yes, we're going to continue participating in the coalition, and yes, we'll provide any support to the tribal populations on our border in Western Iraq, in coordination in Iraq with the Iraqi government,
including weapons,
as needed. And whatever is needed, we are working with the international community with, because you know the burden on that financially is a big burden. So we will provide within the means that we can provide, within the expertise we can contribute to.
Just last question. In the midst of all this chaos we just described, Jordan has launched its agenda to 2025. How can you be optimistic about, growth, business-friendly climate in such a volatile region?
Listen, I think the world needs to know and give credit to Jordan that we're a country that lives in a geopolitical location, that if we use the excuse of having, a difficult situation around us to plan our own development, then we would have never developed our country. So the way we look at this is we deal with the reality that that's the given in the region, and we work on a parallel track. On the opportunity side, Jordan has launched its blueprint, economic blueprint by the year 2025, what we're planning to do over the next 10 years. We launched a package of investment projects worth $20 billion that are coming up, of which we signed preliminary agreements on 7 billion, as you saw during this conference, where we use public-private partnership schemes to attract private investment to invest in these critical
Especially
projects.
From the Gulf, maybe?
So from the Gulf, internationally, we have already 7 billion over the past 5 years of PPPs that we implemented in transport, in energy, in water. So this is, I think, what makes Jordan Jordan and makes it different. When we lost the Egyptian gas in 2011 and we were hit very hard in energy, we moved quickly to diversify our energy sources. So where are we today? We just packaged in the past 2 years over 500 megawatts of renewable energy projects in solar and wind very successfully, and we're doing much more in that field. We take a challenge, make it into an opportunity, because that's how you survive. That's the way you do it. So on the positive side, on the opportunity side, Jordan is going aggressively on its economic track. We have great business opportunities. The region still has great potential, great consumers, great reconstruction potential down the road, and we're connected to 1 billion consumers through free trade agreements in the region, 300 million, and across the world with the EU, with Canada, with the US, with Turkey, with Singapore. So we have markets for the region. We're a critical gateway for the region, but beyond, through our FTAs. On the challenge side, we have, you're right, to deal with sustaining our resilience, to deal with the refugee burden, and that's what we do well. We do this well. We manage our country quite well in terms of absorbing. The reason we're a safe haven is because we continue to develop our country, we empower our citizens, we invest in our human resources, but that keeps you and makes you, fortunately, a safe haven, which in the turbulence forces you to absorb more and more refugees that come in. We have refugees from Iraq, from Syria, from Yemen, from Libya, but luckily we always find the way, especially because of the appreciation of the international community and the regional partners of Jordan in terms of the role we play, and they've always been standing by us, maybe not sufficiently, but standing by us enough to enable us to sustain our resilience and yet continue our development plans.
Imad Fakhoury, thank you very much for your time, and thank you very much for watching this edition of the interview here on France 24.